So yesterday we started building our raised beds for our new garden area. So we're building this new garden area, and it's going to have raised beds around the perimeter. It's also going to have a fence around the perimeter to help keep the wildlife out. And we're building it right here next to our house. So it'll be really handy for us to be able to walk out and to take care of the garden and pick our vegetables. And this year I've gardened before in the past. I've gardened for several years, and I've always just used you know regular old fertilizer and different bug sprays and stuff like that. And this year I'm going to try to go organic in this garden. So that's going to be something different for me. It will be more challenging trying to grow organically, but that's what I'm going to try to do. So what I want to do before I build any more raised beds is I want to fill up this raised bed right here. This raised bed is 24 feet long, it's 3 feet wide. That's 66 cubic feet of potting soil that I need to put in this raised bed. And organic potting soil is ridiculously expensive. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to mix up my own potting soil to put in here. And the products I'm using aren't certified organic, but yet they should be very close to organic. They shouldn't have any chemicals added on purpose or anything like that. There's no guarantee that there's nothing in them, but I'm going to mix these together today, and it should be fairly close to an organic potting soil. And hopefully I can get this raised bed filled up so that I can go ahead and plant some of my plants. Now, yesterday while I was building these raised beds, I don't remember anything necessarily happening yesterday, but for some reason I woke up this morning. This wasn't here last night. I woke up this morning and I have a black eye this morning. I don't know why. This isn't sore. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I do take blood pressure medication, and I take like aspirin every day, like a baby aspirin. Maybe that thins my blood a little bit where it makes it easier to bruise, but I really don't know what happened here. So I think I'm just gonna, pass it off that, I didn't do the dishes or take out the trash, and my wife, she taught me a lesson, maybe she beats me a little bit. Because I know when I get to work, that's what the guys are gonna say. They're gonna be like, "Oh, your wife beat you up again," So I did get a black eye a few times working, building this house, so it's kind of a little joke. I'm sure that they'll ask me what I did wrong for the wife to punch me. So, but anyway, not sure exactly what happened here. But let's go ahead. Let me show you the stuff that I got to mix together to try to make potting soil that's pretty much organic. So the first thing we're going to use to make up our potting soil is going to be this peat moss. Now, peat moss is a pretty light, fluffy material. It makes a good loose soil. And as I was actually looking at the bag, it does say that it is listed for organic materials. And I noticed on this other bag that I have over here, this is a used bag, different brand, it does say for organic gardening. So to make our potting soil, we are going to use basically half of our potting soil is going to be this peat moss. So I've got some of these really big bales. These are 3.8 cubic feet. Most of the bales I always buy are usually about 2.2. So this is a pretty good size bale here of peat moss. So this was the most expensive thing to buy to make up our potting soil. So the next component is topsoil. So these are just some bags of regular old topsoil. There's really no guarantee that there's not any chemicals in here. This isn't certified organic, but hopefully it doesn't have any added to it on purpose. This topsoil is fairly cheap. It's normally about $1.80 a bag. I think I got this for like $1.28 a bag. And I ended up getting all of this topsoil for about the price of 2 of these bales of peat moss. So this is a fairly cheap ingredient in our potting soil. So our next ingredient is going to be some type of compost. So this here is this is basically a manure and compost is what it says. I've seen other ones that say composted cow manure, and there's all different types of compost that you can buy. So just any type of manure or compost will be kind of the next ingredient in our potting soil. So our compost and our topsoil and our peat moss are going to be our main 3 ingredients. So we're going to mix this 2 parts of peat moss to 1 part of topsoil and then 1 part of the compost. So that's going to make our peat moss pretty much 50% of our mixture. And then we've got a few amendments that we're going to add. This is some ag lime. So ag lime, the reason we're going to add ag lime is, one is peat moss is more acidic. It has a lower pH than normally probably what you want. And to bring the pH of the soil up, we're going to add this ag lime, and that'll help adjust our pH. Plus there's probably some minerals and stuff also in that lime that could be beneficial. So the next thing we're going to add is, this is blood meal. And blood meal, if you look at this is your fertilizer numbers here, it's basically all nitrogen. So this is a nitrogen fertilizer, it's organic, and that'll be good for your leafy vegetables like lettuce or anything you want a lot of green growth on. Blood meal is definitely a good thing for that. The next one is bone meal. So bone meal has a lot of phosphorus, but you see it has a little bit of nitrogen in it as well. This is good for your root vegetables. So this will be good for onions, potatoes, garlic, you know, anything. Phosphorus itself is pretty much, it's good for your growing the roots of the plant. So root vegetables benefit a lot from the bone meal. And that's pretty much the 3 amendments that we're going to be using. And we're not going to add those until at the end. We're going to top the soil with these, and we're just going to mix these in the top couple inches of the soil. Well, it looks like it's going to take me about 4 loads to get a 8-foot section filled. So I better get mixing this stuff up. This peat moss is so dry. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to try to mix the peat moss up and get it a little wet. Just try to get it a little bit wetter before I add the potting soil and the compost. And so I think it'll be easier to wet this down by itself. Now you may think that's a lot of water, but this peat moss, it will take a lot of water to kind of moisten this peat moss up. Cow manure and compost. Slimier. Definitely wetter. Alright. Now it's time for topsoil. It's grayer. Looks a little bit more gray. This could just be the type of compost this is. Maybe this is just a little bit more tacky, you know, kind of sticky. Well, now that I've got it all chopped up, I'm just going to mix this all together. Well, I got my potting mix. I got it all mixed up and got these beds filled up. So it filled up the beds pretty good. I'm about 3 inches from the top. So that was 50 cubic feet of potting mix, and I needed 66 to be able to fill this completely to the top. So I think it turned out pretty good. I'm about 3 inches from the top of the bed. and that probably will compact over time. That'll probably end up closer to 4 inches from the top, you know, once it starts to compact a little bit. So now what I need to do now is just try to help amend the soil, and we're going to add our bone meal and our blood meal and our ag lime. So what I'm going to use just a solo cup. I'm going to use this as my measuring device. So I'm just going to add a 1/2 cup of bone meal and a 1/2 cup of the blood meal every 8 feet. So I've got a fence post every 8 feet and a total of 24 feet long. So I'm basically going to add, for this entire bed, I'm going to add a 1.5 cups of each. And this is a 3 foot wide by 24 foot long bed. Now the ag lime, I'm going to use twice as much. So basically I'm going to use 1 full cup every 8 feet. And so I'm going to end up using 3 full cups of the ag lime. So we're just going to sprinkle this on the surface, and then I'm going to take a rake. We're going to try to rake it in and just kind of work it into the top few inches of the soil. And then this raised bed should be ready, and should be, you know, ready for me to plant. So this is the bone meal. That's the organic bone meal. And then this here is the blood meal. You see that blood meal just is very black. It's like a black sand is what that looks like. So there's your ag lime. It's like this white powder. The way I understand it is that pretty much comes from crushed limestone. I may be wrong on that, but I think that's where that ends up coming from. So it's been a little over a week since we made the potting soil and filled these raised beds, and so we've had our cold spell. It's went by. It's nice and warm now, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to get this bed all planted up. So I've already got some plants ready to go. I've got a bunch of kale plants right here. I've got some cauliflower plants, and I've got some broccoli plants, and then I have a couple sage plants mixed in that I'm going to mix in there with the broccoli and cauliflower, and we'll have this bed all planted, and then it'll be done. Then I can continue on with the rest of the raised bed garden. As you can see, I've got some black plastic laid out here. This is basically just trying to kill the grass off inside of the garden area. I need a little bit more plastic to be able to get it all covered. But I'm gonna go ahead and start getting these plants planted. So planting these plants in this raised bed actually went really easy. That potting soil was like super loose. I was able to just reach down in there and pull that out just with my hand. No tools required. So it's just a really loose potting mix. If you don't want it that loose, I would just suggest putting more topsoil or compost in with it, and that'll get more compact, and it won't be as loose. And so we'll just have to wait and see how this does. I may want to change my ratios in the future, but in the future I'm probably not going to buy bagged topsoil. I mean, I just don't. This is just too big of a project to buy a bunch of bags and fill all these raised beds. So what I'm going to do to keep the cost down is and this may sound expensive, but it's going to keep the cost down overall, is I'm going to have a dump truck of topsoil brought here and unloaded. So I'm not sure what that'll be. It'll probably be around 15 tons of topsoil. It'll be a lot of topsoil. Not sure, you know, if that's like 9 yards of topsoil, 12 yards of topsoil. I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, it'll be a lot of topsoil, and that should be enough to fill these raised beds up. I can still amend it with some peat moss and compost to try to loosen that topsoil up. The topsoil they will be probably from closer over by the river, it'll be a very sandy topsoil. So I'll want to definitely add some organic matter to it to be able to hold moisture, because it will be a sandy topsoil that they bring me. But I'll amend that up and fill these raised beds. I should have extra left over that I should be able to top the garden area with topsoil as well, because this is all clay soil here on top. There's not really much topsoil left in this area after building our house. You know, the bulldozer's gone over this and regraded it, so there's really not much topsoil here. So hopefully I got enough topsoil in one dump truck load, which would be about 250 bucks, which is cheaper than just keep buying potting soil. I should be able to fill these raised beds and hopefully cover some of this middle area where it's going to be an earth garden with some topsoil. So that's kind of the plan. Probably the next video we'll come back and try to do these raised beds down this slope. Try to stair step them down this slope here. I did a little bit of recon. I went back and I looked at the septic tank video. I have a leach field that comes through here on this septic tank, and that post, I'm gonna have to look at it again. That post is really close to being on top of one of the leach fields. So that post may actually have to shift about 2 feet in. So I'll have to look at that and see if I need to adjust that end post over there. But other than that, we'll come back. We'll try to build these raised beds down this side and stair step them down the hill. And hopefully it looks good when we're done. Just have to wait and see. But that'll probably be what's next. So stay tuned. More to come, trying to build a fenced-in garden area here next to my house. Thanks for watching.